In today's video, I'm going to be taking you through the 10 worst exercises for building muscle if you could only choose 10. We're going to cover exercises for the chest, shoulders, triceps, lats, rhomboids, biceps, abs, quads, hamstrings, and calves. First off, we're going to be starting with shoulders. The exercise that I think is the worst in terms of investment is going to be the dumbbell anterior raise. And a lot of bros do it. And a lot of bros are going to be butthurt after seeing this, but this is the truth. So the dumbbell anterior raise works the front of the shoulders, which is the anterior head of the deltoid. So if you're not aware, the shoulder's broken into 3 heads. We have the anterior head, the medial deltoid or the lateral head, and then we have the rear deltoid. So it's broken up into 3. The anterior deltoid works in pretty much every push exercise that we do. So if you're doing a push-up, a bench press, a chest press, if you're doing dumbbell overhead press, your anterior raise is getting worked every single exercise that you're doing. That is like pressing. So when we do it with the time that we have in the gym to spend on our shoulders, if we're just gonna come into the gym and do these anterior raises, all we're doing is a muscle group that's already getting hit when we're not focusing on it. And that's why it's one of the worst exercises for building muscle. You just don't need to spend time doing it because it's going to develop when you're doing chest day. So with the shoulder day, here's a little tip for you. You want to focus on your lateral raises or any type of variation. You can use cables, you can get on a bench, you can lean in and kind of come this way to change the resistance profile. But if you spend most of your time on your lateral raises and building up your lateral head of the deltoid, you're going to get more of that V-taper, superhero, big deltoid 3D shoulder look because your lateral head of the shoulder is not really being worked when you're doing bench presses and tricep dips and shoulder overhead presses. They're only getting worked when we're doing lateral raises. Triceps, single arm dumbbell tricep kickback. Absolutely a waste of time. Why, Brock? Why is it a waste of time? A lot of people will do this. A lot of people, once again, are going to be butthurt. When we're using a dumbbell, the only kind of thing that's making it hard is the weight of gravity pushing it down. And when we're doing a kickback, if the weight is here and gravity's going down, it's not opposing the tricep. So that's not going to be very hard for the tricep. If we do it with a cable machine, all right, if we come through here and I do a kickback like this and I straighten my arm, it's not gravity, but it's the cable that's challenging the tricep. And this is directly opposing the line of the tricep. So this is actually very hard. So if you are going to do a kickback, use a cable because there's constant tension. But if you use a dumbbell and my arm's out here, that's not hard for the tricep. So in terms of trying to grow your triceps and get bigger arms, this is just too easy. It's a waste of time. Don't do it. For the lats, I don't know who invented this exercise or why someone would do it, but it's just absolutely stupid. Some people, I saw this online, instead of just pulling the lat pull down machine like a normal human being that wants to get jacked lats, they're coming down like this, on the side. And then here, lefty, righty, wasting timey. All we have to do, literally, to get the same result is just pull straight down and work them both at the same time. It's not more beneficial, it's not more effective to come down and crunch on one side, to work that specific lat and then come down and work this specific lat. It doesn't make it better in any way, it just literally takes double as long and it's less effective because your grip is going to fatigue as you try and do that. So you may as well just put some more weight on, so you're lifting more weight and just pull it straight down and do your lat pull down as per normal. This is one of my pet peeves, the Renegade row. What it is, it's like a plank mixed with a single arm dumbbell row. So you sit up in your plank like this and then you row and come down. And then you row the other side and come down. And it's just a waste of time. So when we're training to try be as muscular as possible, all you functional training experts can just sit down for a little bit. If you're trying to get jacked, we want to lift as much weight as possible and be as stable as possible, right? So when we're doing this and we're trying to row, but we only have 3 points of contact on the ground, and then we're trying to do like a row here, do you think we're going to be very strong? No. If I do a single arm dumbbell row here on a bench, I can do 40, 42, 45 kilos. If I'm gonna do this Renegade row, this 15 kilo dumbbell or 20 kilo dumbbell is probably gonna be about my limit. So I'm lifting around 40 to 50% of what I can actually lift when I'm doing a proper single arm dumbbell row. So if you're doing this to try and grow your back, it's not going to work. I understand if you have a sport, like maybe, combat sports or something like that, and you're on the ground and you're kind of like, practicing this may, I don't know, somehow translate to fighting or groundwork or something like that. But ultimately, this is just not a very strong exercise. And then people say, oh, but it's a core exercise. Well, if you're gonna train your core, just train your core. Don't try to put 2 things together at once, because instead of doing a plank on its own or doing an ab exercise on its own, which is going to be more effective, you're doing a shitty version of an ab exercise. And instead of growing your muscles, doing a single arm dumbbell row or anything else, seated row, barbell bent over row, you're doing an average version of a single arm dumbbell row. So you're not getting a stronger core or stronger back to its potential. So if you want to be more effective, just do a single arm dumbbell row instead of the Renegade row. That is the worst exercise to do if you want to build bigger biceps. Let me explain why. You might think, bro, but you're just doing bicep curls. Those weren't bicep curls, those were cheat curls. That is 100% utilizing momentum to lift a weight that you cannot lift, but you think you can lift because you got a big ego. And this is what leads to a lot of bicep tears and leads to a lot of injury over kind of like your lifting career with the elbows, with your forearms and stuff like that. When we're curling, we just want to use the biceps. But when we're cheat curling, I'm literally using my hips to get the weight up. Like I'm coming back and I'm kind of like almost kettlebell swinging it. And then I'm leaning back, getting my lower back into it. And then I just kind of like drop it quick. If I was to try and lift this with strict technique, pray for me. Wow, I was not meant to lift that. That hurt my biceps, right? But I was only using my biceps. I wasn't using momentum, and if you want to grow your biceps, that's what you want to do long term. Yes, you might be able to lift more weight if you do swinging. Number one, it's going to lead to injuries long term, but number two, you don't really know how to track that. And this is the main thing, like if you want to get technical with lifting and get stronger and get more buff over time, you want to be able to progressively overload your lift. But if you're doing strict curls with 40 kilos, and then you do 45 the next week, and then 50, and then 60 kilos, but your 60 kilos looks like this, and your 40 kilos looks like this, they're two different exercises, and you can't track your progressive overload correctly over time. For the hamstrings, one of the worst exercises for building muscle that I'm doing for this video, which kind of isn't too true, but it kind of is at the same time, which I'll explain. It's the conventional deadlift. And I'm not trying to shit on the conventional deadlift at all. With the conventional deadlift, we can move so much weight, we can lift so much weight that it costs us a lot of fatigue. And for the amount of stimulus that we get for our hamstrings, I don't think it's worth it. So for example, when we do the conventional deadlift, we have to set up on the correct technique and everything. So we use our quads and our calves to kind of push up past our knees, and then our hamstrings and our glutes get involved and we stand up. But our back is still working too, and we have to hold this really heavy amount of weight. So per rep, it's going to cost us a lot of fatigue. I can deadlift over 200 kilos. I'm not saying that to try and show off, but that when I do that, I'm absolutely gassed. And I don't wake up with DOMs in my hamstrings. I just kind of like feel sore everywhere. But if I was to do something like a seated leg curl over there, or a lying leg curl, or even a Romanian deadlift, that's going to be much more stimulus for the amount of fatigue that I get. So not shitting on this exercise. I think it's great, and I still do the conventional deadlift to this day. But if I'm specifically trying to grow the muscle in my hamstrings, I'm gonna do something else. The plank, one of the worst exercises to build muscle for your abs. Now, this is still a good exercise for strengthening your core, right? But in terms of building the muscles in your abs, it's not the most effective. This is what you call an isometric rep that's held over time. We have different types of reps. We have a concentric rep where we're lifting the weight, the eccentric rep where we're lowering the weight, and then we have isometric reps where we're holding and kind of tensing and just holding a weight and squeezing, which is what the planks are, right? The most effective types of reps for building muscle is number one, the eccentric rep, so lowering, and then number two, the concentric when you're lifting. The isometric, not so much. And this is what is happening when I'm doing planks, right? So if you do want to build your abs, what we want is like this motion, crunching. So my favorite, for example, is the kneeling cable crunch. We also have other things like the reverse crunch, or we have the hanging gar hammer raise. But we really want that crunching action because we have the, if we come from here, we have the eccentric rep, so we have the load kind of lowering, and then we have the lifting of the weight when we have the concentric. There's no real isometric rep, but it's more effective for building muscle. So if you want to do planks, that's fine, knock yourself out, but that's not really going to give you popping abs. That's going to be other exercises that I just mentioned. For the chest, one of my worst exercises that I hate is the hammer strength chest press machine specifically. The reason is when we're doing a chest exercise, a pressing exercise to be specific, the hardest part is when your chest is stretched, so at the bottom. When you're in the hammer strength chest press machine, when you're down the bottom, there's less resistance, there's less weight on you. But when you push out, that's where all the weight is. It's just the way that the machine's structured. So in the shortened position, your chest is getting worked out the hardest. But in the part which stimulates the most muscle growth, all the weight is kind of off the chest. Mate, shut up. Thank you. So when we're down here, we really want So this is where we want it to be the hardest. That's why when we just do things like a dumbbell chest press or a barbell bench press, it's going to be the most effective because all the weight is here. Then as we get up, it's easier. The hammer strength chest press machine is literally backwards. For the quads, one of my most hated exercise would have to be the sissy squat, where you lock your legs in at the bottom and you kind of sit back. Now the reason is it's supposed to be for the quads, right? But what we want to really grow the quads with a squat movement is this kind of knee over toe action. So if you follow me here, so I want to get my knees over my toes and sit really deep like this. But when I'm doing a sissy squat, my legs are locked in and I'm kind of like, you're kind of like sitting back like this and then you're coming back up. Number one, this doesn't feel great on your knees. But number two, there's less knee flexion. So there's less knee over toes and you're kind of like sitting back like this. You can feel it in your quads, but if you just do a normal squat by sitting nice and deep and you have this kind of knee over toe action here, it's actually going to be a lot better for your quads and you're able to lift a lot of weight. You can't sissy squat 150 kilos unless you're like crazy strong or whatever. I'm not that crazy strong, but I can squat 150 kilos on my back for several reps, and that's going to be much better because instead of sissy squatting 50 kilos, I can have 150 kilos, build much more muscle and get stronger. For the calves, my worst muscle building exercise would be the seated calf raise. And that's simply because it's working the soleus, not the gastrocnemius. The difference is the soleus part of the calf is down the bottom and the gastrocnemius is the nice fat part of the calf that we actually want to grow if you want to have that calf look. When we train the seated calf raise and train our soleus, that kind of gives us a thing called cankles. I don't know if that's a legit word or not, but it's kind of like when your legs just go straight down. So you're going to make the bottom part of your ankle a lot fatter and it's not really going to train your gastrocnemius, which is the part that you want to train. So it may be good for strengthening and types of rehab that you may need to do. But if you want your calves to pop, you want to do exercises like standing calf raise and variations of the sort, as opposed to seated calf raise, because you're going to be training a different part of the calf muscle. These were the 10 worst muscle building exercises that I could think of for these 10 body parts. And if you're wondering, but Brock, what are the 10 best muscle building exercises for those body parts? That video is right here. I made it for you.